What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. We got NBA season tipping off this upcoming week, so on tonight's episode, we'll be going over all things NBA heading into the new season, trades that have gone down, some injury news, a few contract extensions that were just announced, and then the top games of the week as NBA opening week is set to tip off. And the AP Top 25 also came out for college basketball, so we'll be going over that. And as last week, we went over the Ken Palm rankings, so we'll be going over kind of the differences and checking all that out. So I hope everybody's doing well. The NBA season's finally here. We're tipping off Tuesday night with a doubleheader on TNT. We'll be going over those games in just a little bit. But first things first, we'll jump into the college basketball world. And the AP preseason top 25 tipped off, was announced this past weekend. And a lot of interesting stuff on it. We went over Ken Palm's rankings in last week's episode, and big differences throughout his rankings and the actual AP rankings. Leading things off at 25, we have Illinois. Illinois was a little bit higher up on Ken Palm, but for the most part wasn't as far down. At number 24, we had Alabama, who was a little bit higher up as well on Ken Palm's rankings, but it's pretty similar. 23 is St. Mary's. St. Mary's is projected to have a pretty solid year in the WCC. As well as Gonzaga. Those are the two WCC teams that have preseason rankings. Villanova is at 22. That's right around what they were on the Ken Palm rankings as well. Villanova's brought in a few transfers and looking pretty solid. And then number 21 is USC. And USC is going to be a very interesting story this year. They have the number one overall recruit in the nation, Isaiah Collier, who's going to be coming in. And, of course, they have Ronnie James coming in. So those are going to be their two highly sought-after freshmen. They have a few returning guys too. They got Boogie Ellis, who remains, and a few other of their pieces who have been pretty dominant over the past few years. Then at number 20, we got Baylor. Baylor's been consistently in the top 25 over the past couple of seasons. They had a top freshman last year, Keontae George, who is now a Utah Jazz. And they have a couple of freshmen coming in, no big time guys though. And then number 19, we have North Carolina. North Carolina is going to be a huge story in college basketball this year. Armando Bacot is back. RJ Davis is back, and they're bringing in a few decent freshmen. So they're looking to try to compete hardcore. And Armando Bacot is returning for his fifth year and made it well known that he wants to win a championship this year. They made it to the national championship back in 2022 when they lost to Kansas, and they went on that Final Four run. But Bacot's going to be back and making things interesting. And then number 18, we got Texas. Texas brings back a few guys. They did lose a few guys, though, as well. Number 17 is San Diego State, who made it all the way to the national championship last year where they lost to UConn. But San Diego State is bringing back a good portion of guys. They had a few guys transfer out, but they're still remaining a top 25 team. Number 16 is Kentucky, which is another interesting one. Ken Palm actually had them ranked a lot lower than the AP poll has them. But the Kentucky Wildcats, again, are going to be ranked pretty low. They're bringing in a bunch of incoming freshmen. They got Robert Dillingham, they got DJ Wagner, and a bunch of other guys, Justin Edwards, who are all coming in who could potentially be first-round picks. They got about four guys who can be potential first-round picks. The only problem is they lost a lot of guys. They lost a lot of guys in depth. They lost Jacob Toppin. They lost Oscar Tshiebwe, who's been one of the best players in college basketball over the past 3 seasons. So he's a big loss, especially in the low post, that they'll be looking to try to replace. If one of those guys was coming back, they'd probably be ranked higher than 16. And number 15 is Texas A&M. And Buzz Williams' squad is being highly hyped up this year. They went on a little bit of a run last year. They kind of overperformed for their roster. And Buzz Williams' squad is actually being looked at to be one of the better teams in college basketball. So at number 15 is a very interesting ranking for them. Then at number 14 is Arkansas. So Arkansas has been very good over the past few years. And they had 3 big-time freshmen last year, Nick Smith Jr. and Anthony Black, who were both first-round picks, and Jordan Walsh, who ended up being a second-round pick. but they don't have any of those star freshmen coming in. But they got Trayvon Brazili, who's coming back, and it's going to be healthy as well. So he'll definitely make things interesting. And then we have the Miami Hurricanes, who made it all the way to the Final Four last year. In the very strange Final Four that we had of UConn, San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, and Miami. But Miami ended up losing probably their two best players from last season, Isaiah Wong and Jordan Miller. But they are bringing back Nigel Pack, who was probably either their second or third best player last year, and they're bringing in Matthew Cleveland, who's a transfer from Florida State. He was a highly sought after guy out of high school and hasn't really done a whole lot with Seminoles, but he's transferring to Miami this year, so he's going to end up. Him and Pack are going to be their two-star players, and they're still ranked at 13. So a lot of the AP voters still think that they're going to be dominant and have a good chance of making a run and be one of the top teams, if not the top team in the ACC this season. And then at number 12, we got Arizona. Arizona is losing a few guys. They're losing their leading scorer, Azuolas Tubelis, who is on a two-way contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, started the season after going undrafted. But they're bringing two of the best transfers that were on the market this offseason. Caleb Love, who is arguably the second best transfer behind Hunter Dickinson. He's coming over from North Carolina for his senior season, and he's going to be the star in their backcourt. And then they got Keyshawn Johnson, too, who was one of the star players on San Diego State in their Final Four run. He's going to be a grad senior this year, so he's using his fifth year to play for Arizona. So they're bringing in those two guys who are going to immediately step up and probably be the team's two best players. And then at number 11, we got Gonzaga. Gonzaga is losing Drew Timme, and they're losing Julian Strawther as well, both guys who went the NBA route. But they're bringing back Ryan Nembhard, Anton Watson, and Nolan Hickman, who's probably going to have a much bigger role in his junior year now. He was a five-star freshman, I'm pretty sure. And his first two seasons, he has not seen much time. But he's definitely going to get a lot more time now in his junior year. He's going to have to step up big time. And Graham Ike is their star transfer from Wyoming. He's been the star player for the Wyoming Broncos over the past few seasons that they've been pretty relevant. He's transferring to Gonzaga, so he could end up stepping in and being one of their star players. And then number 10, we got Florida Atlantic. And Florida Atlantic made it all the way to the Final Four in what was an absolutely astonishing run that they had in the Final Four in March Madness last year. After winning their conference, they were able to, as an 8 seed, make a historic run, and they're practically bringing everybody back. That's why they're ranked 10th in the country, and they're going to be ranked really high as long as they stay dominant throughout the season. Elijah Martin, Janelle Davis, who were their two star players last year, are both returning for their senior seasons. And the rest of the squad is pretty much the same, too. They didn't have too many fifth-year seniors that decided to not come back. So that's why they're ranked at number 10. And Ken Palm didn't even have them in the top 25, which I thought was really weird. That was kind of one of the big points that I said when Florida Atlantic decided to ended up making it like as far as they did. But when we went over to Ken Palm rankings, Florida Atlantic was kind of the more interesting one that I was a little surprised about that they didn't include in top 25. And then at number 9, we got Tennessee. So Tennessee is bringing Josiah Jordan James and Santiago Vescovi back. Both are going to be seniors. And Zakai Ziegler is going to be back. So they had a very good year last year, and they're practically bringing their stars back, their star upperclassmen. So they'll be good once again. Creighton is at number 8. Makes sense also. They're bringing back most of their stars. Baylor Shireman, Ryan Kalkbrenner, and Trey Alexander are all coming back. At number 7, we've got Houston. So Houston, once again, is in the top 10. They lost Marcus Sasser, which is definitely a big loss, and Jarris Walker, who is their star freshman. But they're bringing in a few more freshmen. They got some of their upperclassmen coming back, and it should be dominant again. And then number 6, we have the reigning champion, UConn Huskies. UConn ends up bringing back a few guys. They lost a few guys to the draft with Andre Jackson Jr. and Jordan Hawkins, but they're bringing back Donovan Clingan, who's going to be their star center. and could potentially be a lottery pick in this upcoming NBA draft. And they have a 5-star, the number 12 recruit in the country coming in, point guard Stephon Castle. So they're going to have a decent amount of freshmen, and they've got some of their role players coming back as well. And then for the top 5, number 5 is Marquette. So Marquette practically went on a great run last year, ended up winning the Big East, and Big East Player of the Year Tyler Kolek is back, and Cam Jones will also be back. So they're practically bringing back most of their star players from last year that went on a deep run. So it's not too much of a surprise that they're ranked as high as number 5. And then number 4, we have Michigan State. So Michigan State had a great year last year, and they're bringing a lot of guys back, but they're also bringing in a lot of freshmen too. They lost Joey Hauser, who was their second leading scorer last year, but they're bringing back Tyson Walker, who could easily be a late first round, early second round pick with a good year this year. They're bringing back AJ Hogard and Malik Hall, who were all right around 10 point per game scorers last season. And then as for their incoming freshmen, they have 3 top 30 freshmen coming in. They have the number 16 5-star recruit, center Xavier Booker. Then they also have the number 25 recruit, Cohen Carr, and the number 27 recruit, Jeremy Fears. So they've got some ammunition coming in. They got some good young players, and that's the reason why they're in the preseason top 5. They think that this could be one of Tom Izzo's best teams for Michigan State with the Spartans. And then number 3 is Purdue. So Ken Palm had Purdue at number 1, which was kind of interesting. The preseason rankings have them at number 3. And the big reason why they're number 3 is Zach Edey is back. So Zach Edey was National Player of the Year last year, absolutely dominant, had a historic season for a college basketball player last year, and he's going to be back now for Purdue and will once again be their star player. And then Fletcher Lawyer is also going to be back, 11 point per game score returns, but it's really the reason why they're ranked as high as they are. They don't have too many big time freshmen coming in. They don't have really too many guys returning. Zach Edey coming back is just the difference maker. He's a star player, and with him back, they think that they're going to be that dominant. Then number 2, we have Duke. So Duke brought back a couple of very interesting guys that could have been first round picks last year with Tyrese Proctor and Kyle Filipowski. They both decided to come back for their sophomore seasons and try to raise their draft stocks into the lottery. And Jeremy Roach will also be back, who's been their longtime point guard. They also have, as they always do, 4 guys from the top 35 coming in. They have the number 10 recruit, shooting guard Jared McCain, the number 19 recruit, power forward Sean Stewart, number 24 point guard Caleb Foster, and the number 32 power forward TJ Power. So they got a bunch of good freshmen coming in. They've got some good veterans coming in, good upperclassmen. So they're going to be dominant yet again. So with Duke being at 2 and Purdue being at 3, that leaves only one choice that could be at number 1, and that's the Kansas Jayhawks. So the Kansas is going to be the preseason number 1 team, and it's for mainly one reason and one reason only. They don't have too many top guys coming in from freshman year. They have a few upperclassmen coming back, but Hunter Dickinson is coming in, who is arguably the second best player in college basketball behind Zach Edey. He decided to transfer over from Michigan for his senior season, and he was joining the Kansas Jayhawks to be their star player. And along with him, Nick Timberlake also came over, who was at St. Louis for a while. It was one of the better transfer options that was on the market this offseason as well. So they're bringing in both of those guys, which are going to be 2 kind of game changers, in my opinion, to make things a little bit more interesting. But that's your AP preseason top 25. In my opinion, not too many surprises. I would have liked to see St. John's in the top 25, but they're just on the outside. I think they came in at number 30 in the voting, which is good enough for me as a St. John's fan. But I like this top 25 a lot more than I liked Ken Palm's top 25. I thought that there's a lot of weird rankings of Ken Palm's. I mean, Florida Atlantic not even making the top 25 was crazy when they're the number 10 team in the country in the AP poll. So definitely a very interesting one, and it's pretty accurate for every team going into the season. So I liked that. I liked it as it was. So that's enough college basketball. We got a lot of NBA to get into, so we're going to be jumping over to that. First things first, a trade went down this past week. Kevin Porter Jr. was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Um, the news broke over the past few weeks that he's been in a lot of legal trouble off the court. Houston Rockets basically wanted him out of town, so they were working on a trade and they were able to land a trade. So in this trade, the Rockets ended up getting Victor Oladipo, who did not really want to play for the Thunder, and Jeremiah Robinson Earl. And in exchange, the Oklahoma City Thunder got Kevin Porter Jr., who they quickly waived, and who is now a free agent. Oklahoma City decided to eat the final years of that contract that he signed with Houston. And I mean, Porter's going to have to spend this season figuring out if he's going to spend any time in jail rather than if his NBA career is going to continue. So he's going to have to deal with that. So he's got a lot bigger issues than playing in the NBA this offseason. So he was quickly released. So the Thunder kind of just did that just to get rid of a couple of pieces and take on a contract in order to get a couple of second rounders. So they added to their plethora of draft picks. They got 2 second rounders as well, a 2027 and a 2028 second rounder. And neither of these, by the look of it, are that big of draft picks. They're 2 second rounders for upcoming years, but this just adds to the plethora of draft picks that the Thunder have over the next several seasons. They have a ridiculous amount, and they just keep trying to add to it pretty much. So that was pretty much the goal in this trade, and I thought it was a good trade for both teams because Oklahoma City got rid of 2 guys that they weren't even sure was going to make their team. This clears way for Trey Mann and Davis Bertans to make the opening day roster, which I think the Oklahoma City wanted to do. They had like 18 guys under contract for 15 spots, so they had to try to figure that out. They ended up releasing Jack White, who in an episode ago I predicted that was probably going to be the guy that got left out. And the Rockets got a valuable backup big man too, and a potential deadline trade piece. So Victor Oladipo is still working his way back from the injury he suffered in the playoffs for the Miami Heat. So he, at the very least, is going to miss the first couple of months of the season. So I think the Rockets' goal is going to be hold on to him to start the season, have him rehab with the Rockets, and at the very least, maybe have him play some games to try to trade him at the deadline, see if you can get anything for him. And Jeremiah Robinson Earl is a very good backup big man. They didn't really have a backup big man besides Jock Landale. So Robinson Earl is going to step in to be one of their key guys off the bench. So the Rockets ended up getting 2 good pieces. Oladipo might end up sticking out with the Rockets. But at the very least, he could end up being a trade deadline piece that they can get more from. And they got Jeremiah Robinson Earl in exchange for Kevin Porter Jr. And Oklahoma City is gladly going to eat the money. They don't have too many big contracts they can afford to, and they end up getting two more second round picks. So a decent trade for both teams. Both Houston and Oklahoma City just want to get Kevin Porter off the roster, so he's out of the NBA now, and we'll figure out soon enough, I guess, if his NBA career will at all continue, or if he's going to be serving time in jail. So jumping over from that, we have some injury news going on around the league. Steven Adams is going to be out for the year. So that news just broke this past weekend, and no one really knew anything about that. He missed time in the preseason, but they just found out that he had surgery on his knee to help repair his PCL, and that's going to hold him out for the entire season. So Steven Adams is down for the year now for the Memphis Grizzlies, and that's a huge, huge blow. For a number of reasons. The injuries are starting to pile up for the Memphis Grizzlies, and Steven Adams was the enforcer on this team. They have Marcus Smart now, who you can argue is kind of like an enforcer, but Steven Adams was their big man that nobody really messed with down low, and they're not going to have that piece for the rest of the season. And the injuries are just beginning to pile up for the Grizzlies. They're going to be going into the season now, starting the season this week, without 3 of their key pieces. Brandon Clark is still going to be out for several more months after tearing his Achilles during the playoffs last year. He, at the very least, won't be back until probably December or January, so he's going to miss a couple months. You have John Morant, who's going to be suspended for the first 25 games this season, so a good chunk of the year, almost a third of the year. He's going to be suspended for. So he won't be back until I think some point in December. And now you have Steven Adams, who is down for the entire season. So you got three of their key pieces, three guys that have been key pieces to their dominant years over the past few years that are all out long term. So going into season now, it looks like their starting lineup will probably be Marcus Smart and Desmond Bain in the backcourt. Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Santi Aldama will probably be the starting front court. Unless they want to go smaller, they want to start Jackson at the five. Maybe they start Xavier Tillman or one of their other combo forwards as well. But if they want to start a full-blown center, then Santi Aldama will probably start all season long in exchange for Steven Adams. So this makes things a lot really interesting. I predicted the Grizzlies to not have too much of a great year this year. I kind of have them. My predictions will be releasing going into this week, so we're definitely going to be sharing that out on the 3 and D and all the twit and all of our handles to let everybody know. But I had the Grizzlies being a playing team and being under 500. I thought that these three big injuries are going to end up holding them back big time. And I predicted this even before I knew about Steven Adams, so this is going to justify my prediction even more. The Grizzlies could definitely have a down year this year, and even when John Morant comes back, it's going to be tough to see if anything hangs over the team as a whole throughout the season, and what the consequences basically are going to be for what John Morant's been doing. So Steven Adams will be out for the year with knee surgery. And then a few NBA contract extensions also went down this past weekend. We saw three guys getting re-signed. First one was Denny Avdija, who just signed on Sunday to a 4-year, $55 million contract extension with the Washington Wizards. After Kyle Kuzma was extended for 4 years and the trade for Jordan Poole, a lot of people were wondering if Avdija is even going to start this season. And I think the Wizards heard that and quickly reacted and decided to sign Avdija to a 4-year contract extension. Very well deserved. He's played great over the past few seasons for the team. He's more of a combo forward. He can play the point guard a little bit. He's a good ball handler and does a lot of little things. He's a good defender, good three-point shooter. So I think that this is a good move for the Wizards to give them a little bit more depth as well, and not have to worry about him hitting restricted free agency this offseason, which he was on pace to do. He was a 2020 draft pick, so all of those first rounders will be hitting restricted free agency this offseason unless they signed an extension like Anthony Edwards did and LaMelo Ball did. Those guys you won't have to worry about, but the other guys will be hitting restricted free agency. So Denny Avdija re-upped with the Wizards. I thought that was a good move. Zach Collins also re-upped with the Spurs at 2 years, $35 million. With how young the team is and the direction they're going, there's going to be questions if he was even going to start. The most likely front court lineup was going to be Jeremy Sohan, Keldon Johnson, and Victor Wembanyama to start the season. Zach Collins being the sixth man or the seventh man or the top big man off the bench. He probably still will be, but they paid him very nicely. They gave him a 2-year, $35 million extension. He'll be getting paid $17.5 million over the next 2 seasons. I think it kicks in after this year, that contract extension. So definitely a good get for the Spurs to be able to keep Collins around. He's always a good player as long as he's not hurt. I mean, he spent the majority of the last 2 seasons on the shelf with injuries, and they still rewarded him with a contract extension anyway. So that just kind of goes to show Greg Popovich's opinion on Zach Collins and the kind of impact he has when he's playing. And then for the Denver Nuggets, we had Zeke Naji signing a 4-year, $32 million extension. The NBA champions, Naji was drafted in 2020, was also going to be a restricted free agent this offseason. First few years in the league, he really didn't play much, spent some time in the G League. This past season, he got a little bit more playing time as one of the key backup big men for the Nuggets. And now after they lost a few guys in free agency, Naji is projected to be one of the top guys off the bench for the Nuggets this season. And they seem very comfortable in him being one of their top backups, as they're going to be paying him $8 million over the next $8 million a year over the next 4 seasons. So they gave him 4 years, $32 million, and they rewarded for him for that. So I thought that was a good move. Naji did play well last season. He got some decent minutes for the Nuggets as they won the NBA championship. So not too surprised by by that move. I thought that that was a pretty good move to bring in order to lock him up and kind of lock in for the Denver Nuggets. So those were three contract extensions that I liked that went down over this past season, over this past weekend, and were definitely some interesting talking points. And now with the NBA season opening up this week, we're going to go over the NBA opening week games to watch. So there are a few games that are definitely come to mind. This with obviously the NBA season tipping off, and two of them are going to take place on Tuesday. So there will be no games on Monday nights for the NBA season, but Tuesday night is when the fun begins. There'll be two games Tuesday night. First game being the Los Angeles Lakers at the Denver Nuggets, which will be Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on TNT. So that's the first game to watch. It'll be Nuggets ring night for it as it's in Denver, and LeBron's going to come to town, and I think it's going to be very interesting. I don't know if you guys saw any of the storylines, but Contavious Caldwell Pope has kind of been calling out the Lakers a little bit after the Nuggets won the championship. The Nuggets were making some comments after they won the championship. Michael Malone said a few things about the Lakers. So these two teams don't really like each other. And then LeBron also came out and said over the past couple of days that teams got to watch themselves when they're talking about the Lakers off the court because they're going to make some damage this year. So LeBron's kind of guaranteeing some payback from the Lakers this season. So this game is going to be even that much more interesting. Obviously, the Denver Nuggets get their rings, and obviously this all started when the Nuggets beat the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals this past season. So things are starting to heat up again this year, and that's going to be the way that the NBA season tips off. So there's no better game that the NBA season could be leading up to than Lakers versus Nuggets. So I'm really excited for that game, regardless of who's playing, all that kind of stuff. I mean, everybody's healthy, but the Lakers really don't have any notable injury issues, and the Nuggets don't have any notable injury issues. So we should be seeing a fully healthy team for both of those teams, with ring night being in Denver, and a little bit of chippiness too. Contavious Caldwell Pope and LeBron, might see a little bit of jawing back and forth throughout the game. I'm very interested to see that game. I'm going to be watching that beginning to end. That's the one game this week that if you have to figure out a time to move some stuff around to watch, I would highly watch that game. And then the game after that will be the Phoenix Suns at the Golden State Warriors, which will be Tuesday night at 10 o'clock, also on TNT. Doubleheader for opening night. Suns versus Warriors is going to be really interesting because we're going to be seeing the debut of Bradley Beal and the new look Phoenix Suns heading into the Bay Area. I'm excited for that game. We're also going to be seeing Chris Paul's debut for the Golden State Warriors and what that's going to look like. We still don't know if Chris Paul is going to be starting this season or if he's going to be coming off the bench. There hasn't been any definite word from Steve Kerr or any of his coaching staff if Chris Paul is going to be coming off the bench. That might come out within the next day or two before the season, or they might just surprise us Tuesday night, and we'll see what kind of lineup. As of right now, I think it seems like that the three of them are going to start together. Chris Paul, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson, but I think that a good move could be to have Chris Paul come off the bench and lead the second unit, but that'll make things interesting. But Bradley Beal's debut for the Phoenix Suns, Kevin Durant obviously returning to the Bay Area as well. That's going to be another big storyline that'll make things interesting. So I'm excited to see that. That could also definitely be a preview of the Western Conference Finals this year too. Phoenix Suns versus Golden State Warriors. Those are two teams that some people think are the two best teams in the Western Conference heading into this season. So I'm excited for that. And then Wednesday night, we got another good game on ESPN. Wednesday night at 7, we got the Celtics versus the Knicks. So this is the opening night for both of these teams from Madison Square Garden. So we're going to get all the festivities for the New York Knicks opening up the season. And of course, this is a big game for no reason other than the rivalry. I mean, Celtics-Knicks rivalry has always been a big rivalry, and we don't see too many competitive teams out of the Knicks. So the rivalry hasn't been that strong over the past few years. But both these teams are competitive, and they both have aspirations to make it deep into the playoffs this year. So I'm excited for this game. Obviously, as a diehard Knicks fan, I'm going to be tuning in and very excited for this one. But just as an NBA fan, this is by far the best game that's going to be going down Wednesday night. Um, if you're looking for anything to watch, it's going to be on ESPN at 7 o'clock, live from Madison Square Garden. And then Thursday night, 7:30 on TNT, we got the Philadelphia 76ers at the Milwaukee Bucks. This game is going to be big because it is the debut of Damian Lillard in Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's going to be the Bucks' first game of the season. It's also going to be the 76ers' first game of the season as well. So we'll be seeing a couple of different storylines. The two guys who had the biggest trade rumors this offseason will be their teams will be going head to head. Damian Lillard and James Harden. All signs point to James Harden not playing in this game. He's been a no-show this past week for Sixers camp after surprisingly reporting to Sixers camp. So I think he's still sticking to his guns that he does not plan on starting the season with the 76ers. He still wants a trade to happen. And as of right now, does not plan to play for the 76ers until a trade happens. So would not bank on James Harden playing in this game. So it'll most likely be in Joel Embiid versus Lillard and Giannis battle. So that'll definitely make things interesting. And going to be excited to see that Thursday night at 7:30 as well. So that's game one of the TNT Thursday night matchup. And then game two will be at 10 o'clock for TNT's second night of the season. Phoenix Suns at the Los Angeles Lakers will be going down at 10 o'clock p.m. On Thursday night. The Lakers and Suns both have two tough games to lead off the season. The Suns obviously play at Golden State Tuesday night and then at the Lakers Thursday night. And then the Lakers play at Denver and then at home against the Suns. So they both have two tough games to look forward to start the season. Obviously, Suns and Lakers are going to be a rivalry of two Pacific powerhouses this season. And this is going to be the Lakers' home debut. They're playing at Denver on Tuesday night, so they'll be back home on Thursday night to play against the Suns. And the Suns, their first two games of the season will be on the road. They'll be at Golden State, and they'll have to travel down to Southern Cal to take on the Lakers. So that'll be very interesting. You'll see Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and the crew taking on LeBron's Lakers. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see that Thursday night at 10 o'clock. If anybody lives on the West Coast, so it'll be 7 o'clock. If anybody wants to stay up late Thursday night, don't have a long work day on Friday or anything, that's definitely a good game to tune into. And then for the weekend, really one game sticks out to me. For this one, Friday night, 7:30 on ESPN, we have the Miami Heat taking on the Boston Celtics. So this is the second game of the season for the Celtics. The Celtics will open up their season, as we just went over, in New York against the Knicks on Wednesday, and then they'll be heading home to take on the Miami Heat on Friday. So this is a rematch of the Eastern Conference Finals from this past season, the Miami Heat versus the Boston Celtics. So we'll see what we get out of that. Jimmy Butler and the crew will be heading to Boston. I still think that Miami is definitely a competitor to make it out of the Eastern Conference this year. I'm interested to see what they do and what moves they make during the season, because I think that they're still hungry from the Damian Lillard trade. They really wanted Damian Lillard. We're not able to get him. I think that they're still going to be in the market to make a blockbuster trade. And it's going to make things interesting, especially if they get off to a bad start. If they get off to a very dominant start where they're the number one seed in the East and they're rolling through guys, they're definitely going to stick with their team. But if they get off to a so-so start where they're hovering around the 5 or 6 seed in the Eastern Conference and they're losing to Boston and losing to Milwaukee by a decent amount, just look like that they're not up to the level as those two teams, I would not be surprised if they end up making a trade at the deadline. For a frustrated team. And James Harden might end up being just the guy that they trade for. I don't know if they're interested in him. They did not see Bradley Beal as that much of an upgrade. The news came out about that when they were in trade talks about Bradley Beal. Obviously, he ended up going to Phoenix, but they didn't want to trade much for Bradley Beal because they didn't see him as too big of an upgrade. So I don't know if they would see James Harden as too big of an upgrade, but that'll make things very interesting for opening night. So that's going to do it that'll do it for another episode of the 3 and D. I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench Podcast Network for another episode. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel and follow the socials at the 3and D ETB. We'll be putting out content all week. If you missed this episode, if you missed the entirety of the episode, we'll be putting out the highlights throughout the week. So you can catch up and check it out on YouTube and go back and watch the entire episode. If you miss it, it's debuting Monday night at 5 o'clock. So hope everyone has a great night. The NBA is finally here. NBA week is starting. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to Empty the Bench on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a good night, everybody.